Time for another editing video, and in this one you can see that the image that we're going to edit today is super dark, and when I clicked it was backlit and the bird wasn't visible at all, but it is an amazing photo. So what we're going to do in today's video is we'll try to save this picture and retrieve as much information as we can from that and hopefully get to the state that you see on the right. All right, so as you can see, the bird is backlit and it is super dark right now. So the very first thing that we'll do is some basic adjustments to make sure that we are able to at least see the bird, right? So I'm gonna increase the exposure all the way to like 2.3 and maybe add some contrast into it as well, just to do an overall global contrast addition. But if you zoom in now, you can see a bunch of color noise in here. So I think Lightroom has given us one of the best tools out there for denoising, and it's just a simple AI denoise button. So I'm just going to click on denoise and it's going to take a few seconds and do the denoising for me. All right, now it's denoised it, but it looks a little bit more denoised than I want, because if you look at the eye, it looks completely blurred here. So I'm going to reduce this to somewhat 30, and I think that should be enough to give me a little bit more sharpness in the eyes. Right now, let's also click on remove chromatic aberrations to remove any kind of chromatic aberrations we got from the lens, and also enable profile correction, which is going to fix any kind of distortion that was there in the image. Now it's time to do some targeted editing. So we're going to go to the mask option here and let's select on objects, and instead of using select subject, I like to use this because it is more accurate compared to the select subject one, because it end up selecting random things around the bird, which is not necessarily what I want. So I'm gonna just draw the outline of the bird for Lightroom to be able to understand what object I'm talking about. And it does a pretty great job of selecting the bird, except for this bottom section here, because it's covered with a lot of leaves. Now, if you want, you can add that in using a brush tool, but that's okay even if that's not added back in, right? So I think this is good enough. So let's increase the highlight on the bird and maybe reduce the shadows a bit and increase the white slightly. Also gonna add more contrast to it. Now I'm gonna increase the saturation, because not that much, because since the image was a little bit noisy, it made the dynamic range very thin, and that caused all the colors to go away, right, when we increase the brightness. So in addition to that, let's give our bird a little bit more definition. So for that, I'll increase the texture by like 10-15. If you see now, all these lines that were slightly blurred are more prominent. So let's add that. Maybe a tiny bit of clarity, not that much. Okay. All right. So a bird is looking great. Now the next adjustment that we can do is practically on its eyes, right? We want the eyes to pop out because that gives a lot more focus on the bird. So I'm going to go ahead and use my brush tool to select the eye, and let's increase the exposure, maybe increase the highlights, the shadows, increase the whites, and add some saturation in here. Now if you see that the black part is looking very weird here, so let's just erase that out of our brush tool, right? So I'm gonna make it thinner. Let's erase this. Let's also erase the lights that got extremely bright because of this. So I'm just gonna delete this. Now if I zoom out and look at just the bird, the eyes are really in focus and they are shining, which gives your subject a lot more visibility, right? So let's go back here, click on brush, click on erase. I want to remove this bottom section as well, which is not the eye but the border of the eye. So okay, I think this looks good enough. Let's increase maybe a tiny bit of exposure. Okay. All right, the bird is looking good enough, but right now this green color here and this is causing a lot of distraction for me to focus on the bird, right? So you can create a new mask and create a linear gradient, and let's make sure that it is the angle of this line and the linear gradient is the same. And what we can do is we can just reduce the highlights, reduce the shadows, not that much, it looks unnatural. Maybe slightly reduce the exposure and the whites, right? So we have removed a lot of light from there so that our eyes doesn't get attracted towards it. Maybe reduce the saturation a bit as well. And we can also remove the texture and maybe clarity. No, not the clarity. Okay. And also reduce the sharpness. Now we'll do a similar thing at the top as well, but we want to simulate that there is light coming in from the top, right? So what we can do is we can add another linear gradient here. Maybe move it, and we can reduce the texture, reduce the clarity, that it just makes it look a little bit more dreamy, and also reduce the sharpness. Now I also want to increase the exposure here slightly, and maybe highlights and shadows. Yep. And also maybe the whites a bit, and make it slightly warmer and maybe cleaner. And yeah, I think let's also do an overall increase in saturation using the vibrance slider here. And I'm going to add a little bit of blue in here because there's a lot of blue in the bird, and also aqua. Now this just gives it a lot more color, right? And maybe increase the red slightly. Okay, I guess that's about it. There's not a lot of editing needed in this, but just you can see that few slight changes in your image can make it look so much better. And if you compare it with the original image, there is just no comparisons. So hopefully this helped you. Hopefully you can save some of your dark images using this. And if you like the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'm going to see you in the next one.